Almaty, Kazakhstan, January 5th, 2022. You're standing in your apartment, and everything outside is falling apart. Fuel prices just doubled overnight. Protests erupting across the city. People in the streets, chaos building. But you're fine. You've got half a Bitcoin sitting in your wallet. $21,000. You're prepared. You're smart. You pull out your phone to convert some Bcash. And the screen just loads and loads and loads. The government just killed 95% of the country's internet. One switch. Gone. Your Bitcoin is worth $21,000 on paper. In reality, you can't touch it, can't spend it, can't move it, can't do anything with it. The ATMs? Empty. The banks? Locked. Your money? Trapped in the digital void. And your neighbor, the one everyone laughed at for stuffing cash under his mattress like it's 1952, he just bought 3 weeks of groceries, cash in hand. No loading screen? No problem. Here's what the Bitcoin evangelists keep telling you. It's collapse insurance. Portable wealth. 12 words in your head and you can walk across any border with your entire life savings intact. Sounds beautiful, right? I performed the autopsy. Examined every claim. Checked every scenario. The forensics are definitive. Bitcoin cannot function as collapse insurance. It just can't. Now look, I'm not anti-crypto. I'm pro-evidence. And the evidence says something very specific. Bitcoin has real utility. Remittances? Absolutely. Getting around currency controls? Sure. Speculative gains during bull runs? Obviously. But collapse insurance? Let me show you what actually happens when everything falls apart. The 4-layer trap. Bitcoin needs internet. Obviously.
Internet needs electricity. Can't run servers on hopes and dreams. Electricity needs grid infrastructure. Power plants, transmission lines, the whole system. And grid infrastructure? That needs political stability. Someone has to keep the lights on, and they need a functioning government to do it. So when you buy Bitcoin for emergencies, you're not betting on Bitcoin. You're betting on 4 layers of infrastructure, stacked on top of each other, like a house of cards in an earthquake zone. And here's the brutal part. They collapse in reverse order. Political stability fails first, then the grid, then the internet. Bitcoin fails last. Which means it fails exactly when you need it most. Beautiful timing, really. Kazakhstan wasn't an accident. What happened in Almaty wasn't some freak occurrence. It was policy, deliberate, calculated. The government controls Kazakh telecom, and Kazakh law explicitly allows authorities to suspend network operations whenever officials decide communications are, and I quote, damaging to the interests of the state. Translation, we don't like what you're saying, so we're turning off the internet. They flipped the switch. 95% shutdown, nearly a week. And this isn't some isolated incident. NetBlocks, the organization that monitors internet connectivity worldwide, documented the pattern. 56 shutdowns in 2016, more than 80 in 2017. By 2020, 155 documented blackouts across 29 countries. Syria, Gaza, Sudan, Afghanistan, Yemen. Pakistan blocked Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube selectively. The Taliban ordered fiber optic shutdowns to prevent immorality. This isn't theoretical. This is happening repeatedly, everywhere.
Governments shut down the internet when they face unrest. That's just what they do now. And the moment they flip that switch, your Bitcoin becomes a very expensive string of numbers you can look at but never use. Venezuela, the real story. But what about Venezuela? The crypto bros ask. 10% of the population holds crypto. 3 million people. Real adoption. Okay, fair point. Let's look at what they're actually using it for and what happens when they try to spend it. Bitcoin transaction fees hit $2.40 in May 2025, all-time high for the year. Venezuelan transit fare? 400,000 bolivars, About 20 cents. The fee is 12 times the product value. Imagine trying to buy a bus ticket and paying 12 bus tickets just to move the money. You cannot build an economy where moving money costs more than the thing you're buying. Picture this. Caracas, 2023. You're a freelancer. You get paid in USDT, Tether stablecoins, because the Bolivar became toilet paper years ago. Everyone knows this. You've got $500 in your digital wallet. You need groceries. The bodega accepts USDT through a QR code. Modern, convenient, the future of money. You scan it. Transaction fee? $2.40. For bread, that costs 80 cents. You're spending 3 times the product value just to move the money. 3 times. Your friend who kept US dollar bills in a shoebox like some kind of financial caveman, he hands over $1, gets his bread, pockets the change. Done. Who's the smart one now? Network congestion prices out the bottom 80% of transactions. When survival means spending small amounts constantly, buying food, medicine, fuel, Bitcoin becomes economically irrational.
Not a bug. Not even a feature. A fundamental architectural problem baked into the system. The stablecoin truth. Here's what the crypto evangelists conveniently forget to mention. Venezuelans aren't buying Bitcoin. They're buying USDT, Tether, dollar-pegged stablecoins. Not decentralized, trustless, revolutionary money, just US dollars with extra steps and extra fees. Turkey, 2023. The lira depreciated 81% against the dollar over 5 years. 81%. Trading volumes hit 34.9 billion in 6 months, half the population participating in crypto markets. Sounds revolutionary, right? The people rising up against fiat tyranny? Look at which crypto they're buying. USDT, again. They're not buying Bitcoin philosophy. They're not embracing decentralization. They're buying dollar access because their government blocks traditional banking. And here's the kicker. The moment President Erdogan's government created regulatory clarity in 2024, crypto adoption didn't accelerate. It decelerated, slowed down. People stopped rushing in. The moment governments reduce currency restrictions, crypto adoption stabilizes. This wasn't adoption of cryptocurrency philosophy. This was circumvention of currency controls. Different thing entirely. Tether's CEO admits it explicitly. Turkish citizens face daily currency depreciation around 3%. They're desperate for dollar access. Stablecoins provide that access. Tether now has 536 million users globally, 187 billion in circulation. And every single one of those dollars depends on 3 things that disappear during collapse: functional exchanges, merchant acceptance, internet infrastructure. Same dependencies, same vulnerabilities, same problem. The mesh network fantasy.
Multiple comments demanded I address this. What about mesh networks? What about satellite broadcasting? You're ignoring the solutions. All right, let's walk through the forensics on why that's a fantasy. Blockstream satellite broadcasts the Bitcoin blockchain continuously via 4 geostationary satellites. You can buy an inexpensive satellite dish and sync blockchain data completely independent of your local ISP. Genuine technical achievement, impressive engineering. Now let me show you why it doesn't matter. The system is one way. You can receive blockchain data, but you cannot transmit transactions via satellite without ground station access. You can watch, you can't act. Gatena built mesh radio networks, person-to-person information relay through short-range radio. Urban range, 3 to 5 kilometers. Bandwidth, kilobits. Transaction settlement, hours to days. A population cannot conduct daily commerce at kilobit bandwidth when food requires immediate payment. Sorry, the bread will be ready in 6 hours when my transaction confirms. Good luck with that. The engineers at Blockstream admit these systems will, quote, hopefully never go mainstream. They describe them explicitly as fire drills, edge case scenarios, experimental resilience testing, not production financial infrastructure, test runs for disasters they hope never happen. In 2019, Rodolfo Novak transmitted Bitcoin from Toronto to Michigan using only ham radio. In 2016, someone established a Lightning Network payment over ham radio between Toronto and the Bay Area. These demonstrations prove technical possibility, while simultaneously proving impracticality.
Transaction settlement took hours. The system depends on volunteer radio operators maintaining infrastructure without economic compensation. These are precisely the people likely to flee during conflicts that trigger internet shutdowns. Same dependency, different infrastructure, same outcome. The Ukrainian refugee reality. One Ukrainian refugee, username LDV, escaped with Bitcoin on a USB drive during the February 24, 2022 invasion. 1. Out of 5.8 million refugees in 10 weeks. That's 0.00000017%. You know what we call a 0.000017% success rate in medical trials? We call it failure. Complete, total, unambiguous failure. 50,000 people fled in the first 48 hours. Banks suspended transfers, ATMs emptied instantly. One documented case escaped with Bitcoin, one success story out of millions. This is survivor bias masquerading as evidence. We found one guy who made it work, so clearly the system works. No. No, it doesn't. The smuggler problem. Turkey-Syria border, 2015. You're a family of 4 trying to reach Greece. The smuggler wants 4,000 euros, 1,000 per person. You have Bitcoin worth 4,500 euros, more than enough. You're covered. You show the smuggler your phone, offer to transfer it right there. He laughs and walks away. The family behind you? They have gold coins sewn into their jacket lining. They're boarding the boat. You're still standing there, holding a smartphone, showing a number the smuggler doesn't trust, can't verify, and won't accept. 1 million Syrians reached Greece during that crisis. Smuggling networks extracted $1 to $3 billion. Legitimate ferry tickets? 10 euros. Smuggler price? 1,000 euros. 10,000% markup. And every single one of them paid in cash or gold. Not Bitcoin, not crypto, not digital anything. Cash, gold. Done. The El Salvador paradox. El Salvador purchased 6,280 Bitcoin, worth roughly $687 million as of February 2026. National Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, a whole country betting on crypto. The government shifted holdings across 14 separate addresses, limiting each address to no more than 500 Bitcoin, reducing exposure to quantum computing threats, improving privacy. This reveals an uncomfortable truth. Even a nation-state accumulating strategic Bitcoin must treat these holdings as extremely valuable digital assets, requiring extraordinary security measures. Cold storage, keeping private keys offline in air-gapped devices, provides superior security against hacking. True. But here's the paradox nobody wants to confront. How do you spend cold-stored Bitcoin if local vendors have no power? Using a cold wallet for daily necessities requires physical access to the device, connection to an internet-enabled computer, identification of a merchant accepting Bitcoin, negotiation of exchange rates, and completion of the transaction. That works for large, infrequent purchases. A house, a car, maybe. It becomes economically irrational for bread, medicine, fuel, the things you actually need during collapse. The security protocols that make cryptocurrency valuable as wealth storage make it terrible as a medium of exchange. Physical cash provides superior transaction fluidity. Cryptocurrency provides superior security for stored wealth. A population experiencing true systemic collapse simultaneously needs both high security and high liquidity. Cryptocurrency forces you to choose. You can't have both.
Cash requires no infrastructure. Gold requires no electricity. Bitcoin requires both. The Goldilocks problem. Here's the paradox that breaks the entire model. Bitcoin works best when infrastructure is degraded but functional, struggling but still online. It fails completely when infrastructure collapses entirely. Maximally useful in marginal dysfunction, catastrophically useless in actual collapse. Venezuela with unreliable banks but working internet? Bitcoin provides genuine utility, real value. Kazakhstan with no internet at all? Bitcoin becomes worthless, instantly. The exact scenario Bitcoin claims to solve is the scenario where Bitcoin stops functioning. The marketing says collapse insurance. The reality says works great until things actually collapse. Venezuela's crypto accounts for 9% of 5.4 billion in remittances. That's 461 million in crypto-based transfers. Real utility, real value. But the moment internet infrastructure fails, as NetBlocks documented in Gaza, where 80% of northern structures lie destroyed, as happened in Kazakhstan when the government disabled 95% connectivity, that utility evaporates, instantly, completely. The low-tech solution outperforms the high-tech solution the moment infrastructure fails. Complexity is fragility. Simplicity is resilience. Money never learns this lesson, and neither do we. What this actually means: if you hold Bitcoin, I'm not telling you to sell it. I'm not telling you it's worthless. I'm telling you to understand what it depends on. Internet, electricity, merchant acceptance, functional exchanges. Stack those dependencies. Picture them like a tower. Then ask yourself, in the scenario I'm preparing for, will those dependencies survive?
Bitcoin ranks somewhere between paper currency and tangible capacity. Better than fiat, worse than food, worse than water filters, worse than medicine. It has genuine use cases: remittances under capital controls, wealth preservation under confiscatory regimes, speculative appreciation during bull markets. Just not collapse insurance. Not that. The data doesn't care about the narrative. One refugee out of 5.8 million, $2.40 fees on 20-cent transactions, 95% internet shutdown rendering millions of dollars inaccessible. These aren't edge cases. These are documented patterns happening repeatedly across countries, across years. The question isn't whether Bitcoin has value. The question is whether you understand what it depends on: electricity, internet, merchant acceptance, exchange liquidity. And whether you're betting your survival on infrastructure that fails first during the exact scenarios you're supposedly preparing for. But you're smarter than the guy in Almaty, right? You've got a plan for when the internet goes dark. Obviously. This forensic breakdown came directly from your comments demanding analysis of crypto during collapse, not theory, evidence. If you'd rather know which dependencies fail first before it actually matters, subscribe to Money Never Learns and tell me what financial narrative you want autopsied next. Drop a helicopter emoji if you're stacking the alternatives that work when infrastructure fails. History doesn't repeat, but humans stay stupid about money every single time.